My name is Aaliyah Moore. I'm 31 years old and a single mom to 6-year-old Lily. That morning, I was just pouring milk for her when my father came up to me, his face flushed with anger. Then he slapped me. A hard slap that sent my head crashing against the edge of the table. Blood hit the cold kitchen floor. My daughter screamed and ran to me, her tiny hands shaking, covered in her mother's blood. I can still hear her cries in my dreams, echoing through nightmares I can't shake. Have you ever been hurt by the very people who were supposed to protect you? Have you ever had to run away from the place called home just to survive? If you've ever found yourself in that kind of situation, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe to the channel. Because the story I'm about to tell will take you to the very edge of heartbreak. And the journey to rebuild began the moment I walked out of that house with Lily beside me. I used to think my life was on the right track. Back when we lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, I'd wake up each morning in a white two-story house with a little balcony full of lavender I planted myself. Lily was just over 3 back then. She'd run out to the porch holding her bottle, grinning, calling out "Mommy" when she saw me coming back from the bakery with our breakfast. Ethan, my husband, used to kiss my forehead before heading off to work and always said, "I'm the luckiest man in the world." I believed him. I really did. My content marketing job was stable, nothing flashy, but something I was proud of. I wrote for an online education company, worked remotely, had time to care for Lily and keep our home warm and tidy. Ethan worked in finance, always off to conferences or client trips. But I never questioned it. I trusted him. I trusted the man who held my hand at our wedding, who cried when we exchanged vows under that arch of white flowers. Then, one March afternoon, I came home earlier than usual. A last-minute meeting got canceled. Lily was still at daycare. I thought I'd tidy up the bedroom, maybe prep dinner early so we could enjoy a little evening together. I stepped into the house, a breeze rustling the curtains. It was unusually quiet. I was about to head upstairs when I heard soft laughter, his voice mixed in, and another sound I'd never heard come from our bedroom. I didn't knock. My hands trembled as I pushed the door open. There he was, Ethan, lying in our bed next to Michelle, my cousin. Michelle had moved from Boston recently, saying she wanted to start over. I let her stay with us for a few weeks, thinking family helps family. I never imagined I was opening the door to a nightmare. Ethan didn't flinch when he saw me. He just pulled the blanket over his waist and sighed like I was the one who ruined their peaceful afternoon. "You said you had meetings until 6, he said, cold and annoyed. I don't remember exactly how I reacted. I just remember the tight grip around my chest, my breath breaking into fragments, and my eyes fixed on Michelle, who stared at the floor, silent. In those few seconds, I understood that the stability I'd worked so hard to preserve had already collapsed, and I was the last to know. The next morning, I dropped Lily off at a friend's place and returned to pack Michelle's bags. I left them at the front door without a word. Ethan sat on the sofa with his phone like nothing had happened. When I told him I was filing for divorce, he shrugged. "Up to you, but don't think you'll get anything out of this marriage." And he meant it, not the wedding vows, but the threat. Ethan hired a well-known attorney in Charlotte, the kind who defends CEOs in scandal cases. I had a court-appointed attorney from legal aid. Every court date, Ethan came armed with spreadsheets proving I didn't contribute financially, that I didn't work full-time, that I just stayed home with the kid and blogged a few hours a day. They called it emotional support. I cried when I heard that phrase. Like the 4 years I kept the house together, raised our child while he traveled, put my career on hold for our family, meant nothing at all. After 3 months of court battles, I walked away from the courthouse with a finalized divorce and an empty bank account. Ethan kept the house, the SUV, the investments, even Lily's favorite golden retriever. I left with Lily, an old car, and a few cardboard boxes full of memories. Tyler, Ethan's attorney, offered child support, but Ethan quickly claimed business is tight and delayed everything. I asked, "Do you even think about your daughter?" He just smirked and turned away. She lives with you. How you manage is your problem. I thought the worst was over once I signed the divorce papers. It wasn't. That was just the beginning. And I had no idea the car ride Lily and I took away from the courthouse that day would be the first of many aimless drives over the next few months. I drove for 3 hours in silence, just the hum of the vents and Lily occasionally whispering, "Are we almost there, Mommy?" I smiled and squeezed her little hand, even as my heart clenched tight with uncertainty. My parents' house was in a small town just south of Greensboro. It's where I grew up, went to school, the place I used to be excited to return to during college breaks. But not this time. I wasn't coming home with joy. I was returning as a broke, single mother, freshly divorced, trying to keep it together for a little girl, slowly learning that life isn't always a fairy tale. I pulled into the driveway at dusk. My mother, Sandra, stood at the door, arms crossed. That same posture, that same critical stare. She didn't say a word until I got out, opened the back door for Lily, and dragged our battered suitcase behind me. "Just a couple weeks, okay?" she said, not loudly, but with enough chill to make me feel like an uninvited guest. "Don't get too comfortable." I nodded. "Just a few weeks, Mom. I'm looking for work. I'll move out as soon as I can." She stepped back inside. No hug. No glance at Lily. My father, Harold, just stood behind her, eyes fixed on the trees like the scenery was more important than his daughter coming home, with hollow cheeks and a 6-year-old clutching an old teddy bear. My childhood room was still upstairs, but now it was full of storage boxes. Sandra opened the door and flipped on the light. "Make do. I didn't have time to clear everything." Lily and I slept on the single bed I used growing up. The sheets were faded. The air smelled faintly of mildew. I didn't complain. I had lost too much to expect comfort. That first night, Lily cried quietly when I turned off the light. I held her, gently patting her back like I did when she was a baby. "Why can't you sleep?" I asked. "This bed's not like our house," she whispered. "And I miss Daddy." I didn't know how to respond. Her words stuck in my throat. I just held her tighter. The next morning, my mom brewed coffee. No one asked if I wanted any. I got up and poured myself a cup. When I sat at the table, she spoke like she'd been waiting since last night. "Where are you planning to find work?" "I'm updating my resume. I'm hoping for a job in digital or remote work, if I get lucky." She nodded, distracted, then dropped a line I didn't know how to react to. "When I was your age, I worked 2 jobs and still raised a family." I swallowed the bitter coffee and said nothing. I didn't want an argument, not now. Every day I searched online for jobs, updated LinkedIn, wrote cover letters. But the market wasn't what it was 7 years ago. The jobs I used to qualify for now demanded advanced digital marketing skills, AI tools, data analytics, things I was never trained for. I signed up for online classes at night after Lily went to bed. My eyes burned from exhaustion, but I couldn't give up. Not now. I took on freelance writing gigs to rebuild my portfolio, even if they barely covered dinner. My mom knew but didn't seem to care. Sometimes I'd hear her muttering to my dad as I walked by, probably just pretending to be busy to avoid housework. I heard it all. I remembered it all. But I didn't respond. I needed a roof over our heads, even if just for a few weeks. I needed some kind of stability. For Lily. My daughter started having nightmares. Every night she tossed and turned, talking in her sleep, clutching her stuffed bear like letting go would send her into a void. One night I jolted awake to her screaming, "Don't leave me, Mommy! Don't go with Grandma!" I held her tight, soothing her with a steadiness I wasn't even sure I had left in me. My father didn't say much. He usually disappeared into the backyard, tinkering with the old lawnmower, or spent evenings in the garage. Whenever I passed by, he'd glance at me briefly before turning away. I couldn't tell if his look meant pity, avoidance, or just a man who didn't want to get involved in women's business. Once, I asked, "Dad, what do you think about me coming back here?" He didn't look at me, just replied flatly, "Your mother's right. This isn't a long-term solution." I let out a quiet laugh. Not bitter, just tired. I started helping Lily relearn the alphabet in the evenings. Little routines helped her feel calm again. Sometimes she'd draw our family on paper, a house with three figures, me, her, and a sad-faced man standing in the shadows. I didn't ask. I just quietly taped the picture above our bed as a reminder that my child was also fighting to adjust. Every day, I powered up my laptop at 5 a.m. I studied, I wrote, I searched for a new door to open. My mother would walk by, sometimes saying loudly, "Staring at that computer again? Nobody's going to hire you." I didn't respond. Because I believed that if I didn't give up, one day, that door would open. What I didn't expect was that before it did, another door, one swift blow, would shatter everything. And I would have to choose between enduring or walking away, with nowhere left to go. That morning, I had just finished washing dishes when my mother walked into the kitchen and glanced at the blue button-up shirt I had on. "You're wearing that to an interview," she said. "Not really asking. Looks worn and wrinkled. Nobody hires people who look like that." I pressed my lips together, saying nothing. That shirt was one of only two decent ones I had left after moving out of Ethan's house. I had ironed it carefully, but for her it was never enough. Even the smallest things turned into lectures. I made dinner. Too much salt. I hung laundry. Wrong direction for the sun. I helped Lily sound out words. Who even teaches spelling like that anymore? Just give her a tablet. Less than a month after Lily and I moved in, the house felt like it had thickened with tension. I was grateful to have a roof over our heads, but that gratitude was slowly being buried under layers of shame. I no longer felt like family. Every time I stepped out of our room, I had to brace myself, like entering a battlefield, where anything I said or did might be turned into an offense. My father stuck to his usual retreat into the yard or garage, but sometimes he threw in his 2 cents. One afternoon I was hunched over, tweaking my resume, when he stood in the doorway, sipping coffee, and said, "You need to grow up, Aaliyah. You really expect someone to support you at your age?" I looked at him, wanting to ask if he'd ever seen me raise Lily by myself. But I stayed quiet. Arguments in this house always ended the same way. I was wrong, because I didn't do things their way. Even though they'd never faced betrayal from a husband, lost a home, or carried the weight of a 6-year-old child while starting from nothing. Lily grew quieter. Every time someone raised their voice, she froze and clutched her bear tighter. One evening while she was eating, my mom noticed a drop of sauce on her sleeve and snapped, "What kind of kid is this? So messy." "Didn't your mom teach you anything?" Lily turned to me with teary eyes. Before I could respond, my mom added, "You keep letting her cry like that, she'll grow up weak. Nobody will love her." That night, Lily wouldn't eat. She just sat quietly, facing the wall. I carried her to bed, tucked her in, and lay beside her. "I don't like it here," she whispered. "Grandma scares me." I stroked her soft hair, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Just remember, I'm always here with you," I told her. "We'll have our own place soon." But those words were starting to feel more like a wish than a promise. I kept applying for jobs every day. During the day, I took on small freelance content writing gigs for a little online shop. Whatever I earned went toward groceries or pitching in for the power bill. At night, I studied data analytics and digital advertising. Skills that younger people now considered basic. I knew if I wanted a real chance, I had to catch up. Then I got an email that nearly brought me to tears. A health tech company in Durham invited me to the final interview round. Marketing associate position, solid starting pay, clear benefits, flexible work environment. I had made it past the first 2 rounds. Only 2 candidates were left. The interview was scheduled for Saturday morning, my mother's 65th birthday. I knew that, but I also knew I couldn't reschedule. I'd waited a month for this shot. The night before, I told my mom, "Mom, I have to go to Durham tomorrow for an interview, so I might miss your birthday breakfast, but I'll be back in time for the evening celebration." She set her chopsticks down, her eyes cold. You're skipping my birthday morning? You think that interview matters more than me? I scheduled it before I knew about your party, and I thought you'd want me to get a stable job. What you think doesn't matter. What you do does. She stood up, picked up her plate, and left me and Lily sitting silent at the table. The next morning, while I was packing my bag and slipping on the only navy dress I had left from my working days, my mom showed up at my bedroom door. You're taking Lily with you? No, Mom. I asked a friend to watch her for the morning. I'll be back in the afternoon. Here's no one home. Your father's out fishing with his buddies. I froze. So, you can't watch Lily for a few hours? You chose work over family. You take care of your own kid. I stared at her, not because I had nothing to say, but because saying anything would be pointless. A moment later, I called Nina, my friend nearby. She agreed to watch Lily, even though her daughter had piano class that morning. I took Lily to the car, turned around for one last glance at my mother. She was still standing on the porch, arms crossed, eyes fixed on me like I was some wayward daughter leaving all over again. I didn't say goodbye. I just turned and walked on, because if I didn't walk out of that doorway today, I might never get another chance. I got back late that afternoon after nearly 3 hours of intense interviews in Durham and a non-stop drive back. As I opened the door, the house was full of chatter and laughter from the living room. Relatives, friends, old neighbors all had gathered to celebrate my mother's birthday. The smell of reheated food filled the hallway. Lily ran to me and hugged me tight, but her little eyes weren't as bright as usual. My mother didn't turn around. She stood in the middle of the room, accepting flowers and hugging guests one by one as if I didn't exist. I glanced around. Everyone was dressed neatly, holding glasses of wine or plates of food. My father saw me, gave a slight nod, then looked away. A moment later, I heard her voice behind me. Oh, Aaliyah finally has time? Just remembered what day it is, huh? The room went silent for a second, then soft chuckles followed. I swallowed a sharp response, not because I had nothing to say, but because I knew she was waiting for a reaction. If I answered back, she'd play the victim and say I ruined her party. I led Lily into the kitchen to get her a drink. She held my hand tightly. Mom, she whispered. Aunt Margie said you don't love the family. She said you work to avoid responsibility. I bent down to her. Do you believe that? Lily shook her head. I think you work so you can take care of me. I nodded and placed my hand over her little heart. Everything I do is for you, Lily. Outside the kitchen, the murmuring continued. I caught phrases like, girls these days only care about themselves, living off her parents and still acts entitled. No wonder her husband left. Each whisper was like a pinprick, small but constant. I knew my mother was the source. No one else could craft such narratives and sprinkle them around like confetti. She didn't just judge me to strangers. She carefully constructed a twisted version of me to show off how tolerant she was for putting up with me. I held it together all evening. I helped carry the cake, took photos of her with her friends, even brought Lily up to sing happy birthday. But I knew, to her, it was all for show. When the lights dimmed, she'd be someone else again. After most of the guests had left and Lily was already in bed, I tiptoed upstairs to check on her. Her bedroom door was slightly open, the soft glow of the nightlight casting a warm hue over her small face. I was about to quietly step back when I noticed Lily sitting up, holding her little pink diary, the one I'd given her for her birthday last year. She flipped through the pages and paused. Mom, her voice trembled. My drawing is gone. I walked in and sat beside her. Which one, sweetheart? They're one of our family. You, me, Grandma, Grandpa, and Dad. I left it on the table earlier. Her eyes started to glisten. Now it's not there. I went downstairs and quietly searched the living room, the kitchen, even my old home office. Finally, I opened the lid of the trash can behind the house, and there it was. The paper. Folded in half, crumpled and soaked with watermelon juice. I picked it up, heart sinking. The pencil marks were still visible. A messy sketch of a house, a blue roof, a little dog on the porch, and 4 people holding hands. Right in the middle was a red stain, and a piece of cake mashed into the part where Lily had drawn her own face. I stood, the paper in my hand, and walked back inside. My mother was in the kitchen stacking plates. She looked up when she saw me. "You threw this away?" I held out the paper. "Oh, that messy thing? It was lying all over the kitchen table. I thought it was trash." I stared at her. "You read it, didn't you?" "What's there to read?" "Some scribbles from a kid, just make-believe stuff." She shrugged. "You knew it was Lily's. You read it and threw it away like it meant nothing." "That's right. It means nothing. I've got 100 things to worry about. One silly drawing isn't important." I clenched my hands, trying to stay calm. "Not to you, but to my daughter, it was everything." She set down a plate and looked at me like I had said something completely absurd. "If you teach her that doodles matter that much, she'll grow up soft." "I'm just teaching her to be realistic." I didn't respond. I turned and walked back upstairs. Lily was lying still, eyes wide open. "Did I do something wrong? Is that why Grandma doesn't like me?" Her voice was thin, fragile. I sat beside her and pulled her close. "No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups forget that kids feel hurt too." "Then why didn't you want to keep my drawing?" Lolly asked, her lips pressed together. I swallowed my tears and stroked her hair. "Because she doesn't understand you the way I do. But I love you. More than anything." She leaned into my chest, and in that moment I knew. There are wounds that don't come from slaps or scoldings. They come from being ignored, from cold stares aimed at a tender heart just learning how to love. And maybe that's the cruelest kind of pain a child can endure. I got the job offer email late at night. Lily was already asleep, the room lit only by the desk lamp I used for studying and working. The line, "We are excited to welcome you to our team next week," blurred everything around me. I cried, not from sadness, but from relief. After nearly 4 months of struggling, a door had finally opened. The salary wasn't high, but it was steady, enough for a small apartment and Lily's school fees. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual and made breakfast with a lightness in my chest. I fried eggs, brewed coffee, and sliced a few oranges for Lily. She ran into the kitchen and hugged me from behind like she always did. "You seem happy," she said, still sleepy. "Yeah, baby, I really am," I replied, kissing her forehead. My dad was already at the table, reading the paper like every morning. My mom stood at the sink drying glassware. I gathered all my courage, wore a hopeful smile, and said, "I got the job. I start next week. I'll be able to move out as soon as I get my first paycheck." No one said anything for a few seconds. Then my mother spoke up, not looking at me, still scrubbing a glass. "Don't get too excited. Just because you're starting doesn't mean it's stable. I've seen plenty of people rush into jobs and end up unemployed again." I kept my voice steady. "I signed a contract. They were very clear about the schedule and benefits." My father folded the paper and sighed. "So, you'll still be here at least 3 more weeks. His tone was flat, no judgment, but also no hint of pride. "Thought this would just be a temporary stay. It's been almost half a year." I said from the beginning I wasn't sure how long, but I've never been lazy, not for a single day. I didn't raise my voice. I just spoke, slowly. The air in the kitchen thickened. I poured milk for Lily, trying to focus on the moment and not get swept up in the silent tide of sighs and glances. Lily sat down, carefully lifting her cup. But her small hand bumped into the orange juice pitcher I'd just placed. The golden liquid spilled across the table, staining the edge of the lace tablecloth my mother always kept tucked away. The crash of the glass wasn't even finished when my mother's voice boomed like thunder at breakfast. "Good grief, that child is clumsy beyond belief. She spills everything she touches." Lily flinched, her face pale, her eyes widened, lips tightened, shoulders hunched like she was bracing for a blow. "She didn't mean to," I said quickly, reaching for napkins. "She's just a kid. Spills happen." My mom spun around, eyes blazing. And how are you raising her? Every time she messes up, there's always an excuse. If you want to parent properly, go do it in your own house. I looked up at her. I will leave, Mom. No need to tell me again. But you have no right to yell at your own daughter like that. My mother squinted, her voice sharper. I can say whatever I want in my own house, and you, living here without paying a dime, don't get high and mighty. I've paid for utilities, bought food, cooked every day. I'm not ungrateful. Not ungrateful. And you dare talk back to your mother like that? Before I could say more, my father suddenly stood up. He stepped toward me, his face tense, then unexpectedly raised his hand. I didn't have time to dodge. The slap echoed so loudly I thought time had stopped. I stumbled, slipped on the spilled orange juice on the floor, then my head slammed hard against the corner of the cabinet under the sink. Dizziness hit and I collapsed to the floor, my vision blurring. Lily's scream shattered the air. Mom, Mom! I felt something warm slide down my temple. Blood. The metallic smell filled my nose. Lily rushed over, knelt beside me, her tiny hands trembling as they touched my face. Mom, you're bleeding. Don't close your eyes. I tried to open them. Everything swayed, voices echoed around me like I was in a cave. My father stood frozen, his hands still slightly raised, eyes full of disbelief, as if he couldn't believe what just happened. My mother didn't come running. She just stood there, face cold as ice, hands gripping a dish towel tightly. I raised my hand to my head. My fingers were stained with blood. The wound wasn't deep, but the pain in my head was sharp, and my heart felt crushed under an invisible weight. I forced myself up. Lily sobbed, clutching my waist. It's okay. Mom's okay, I whispered, though I knew I was lying. Not about the wound, but about everything. I looked at my father. You just slapped me, right in front of your granddaughter. He took a step back, silent. I looked at my mother. And you just stood there. She remained silent. Lily held my hand tightly, tears streaming down her face, but her gaze spoke louder than any accusation. No one in that kitchen was family anymore. Not after what happened. Not after my daughter had to witness her mother's blood spill on the floor with no one reaching out to help. I don't remember how fast I packed. I just knew my hands shook as I shoved Lily's clothes and a few personal items into 2 old suitcases. Lily clung to me, her face soaked with tears, lips pressed tight as if afraid to speak, fearing I might disappear right before her eyes. I whispered to her in a hoarse voice, "We have to leave. Now." She nodded, not asking why. I dragged the suitcases down the stairs, my head still throbbing, the dried blood stuck in my hair near my temple. My mother stood by the living room door, her eyes showing irritation. "Leaving in the middle of the night?" she asked, arms crossed. "With that little one?" I stopped at the last step and looked straight into her eyes. Yes. I won't leave my daughter in a place where she had to watch her mother get hit and then be blamed. Like a nuisance. You're making a mountain out of a molehill, she sneered, glancing at Lily, who was hiding behind me, her eyes still swollen red. Your father lost control because you're so disrespectful. I told you from the start, if you're staying here, you better behave. I said nothing. I just held Lily's hand, opened the door, and stepped outside. The air was colder than I thought. The wind brushed my collar, making the wound sting sharply. I helped Lily into the back seat, buckled her in, then turned to stuff the 2 suitcases into the trunk of our old sedan. Had no idea where I was going. No address waiting for me, no empty apartment welcoming us. Only one name was clear in my mind. Nina. I called her as soon as I got in the car. My voice was shaky, but Nina immediately knew something was wrong. Aaliyah? What's going on? Are you crying? I couldn't hold back. The story poured out like a broken dam. I told her about the slap, the blood, Lily's frightened eyes, the shattered breakfast I would never forget. Nina didn't ask questions. She just said, "Send me your location. I'll wait outside." She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Raleigh, more than an hour's drive from my parents' house. I drove in silence, one hand resting on Lily's to calm her. Every time I looked at my daughter, I saw the look she gave me when she saw the blood dripping down my cheek. A 6-year-old child shouldn't have to witness that. When we arrived, Nina was standing outside the apartment complex, wearing a sweater, eyes full of worry. She rushed over when she saw me open the car door. "Oh my God, Aaliyah!" Her voice broke as she saw the bruise on my forehead, and Lily's red-rimmed eyes. Nina helped me out of the car and wrapped an arm around Lily's back. "Let's go to the hospital. Your head needs checked. I'll watch Lily." Lily was scared of hospitals. She wouldn't let go of my hand. I reassured her the doctor would just bandage the wound, nothing to be afraid of. But honestly, I felt fragile too. Sitting in the emergency room, hearing the rustle of paperwork, the footsteps of nurses in the hallway, I felt small and alone. The doctor stitched 3 stitches, temporarily bandaged the cut on my forehead, and advised monitoring for a few days for a mild concussion. When I left the treatment room, Lily hugged me tightly. Nina waited, eyes red-rimmed. "You can stay with me as long as you need," she said firmly. Nina's apartment was small, just one bed and an old sofa. I knew Lily and I would have to share the couch for a while, but I had no other choice. I helped Nina tidy up a bit, made space for Lily to sleep. Once she was settled, Nina and I sat together under the kitchen light, each holding a cup of tea. "Are you going to report this to the police?" Nina asked, looking straight at me. I shook my head. "No. I don't want Lily to have to go to court or be questioned by officers. Right now, stability is what matters." "So, what's the plan?" I sighed. "I start work next week, but the first paycheck won't be enough to cover the security deposit, utilities, and living expenses all at once. I've looked at apartments, but they want 2 months' rent up front plus proof of income, and I don't have my first paycheck yet." Nina was silent for a moment. "You can stay here until you're ready. But I worry about Lily. She needs her own space, a place to call home." I nodded, eyes stinging. "I know. Every night I watch her curled up on the couch and feel like such a failure." "You're not failing," Nina said firmly. "You're doing everything you can. And you're not alone." I said nothing, just bowed my head, covering my face with my hands. The next day, I started calling everywhere. Real estate offices, old friends, single mom support groups. But the answers were all the same. "We need credit history, proof of 3 months' income, no rentals without a cosigner." I was so exhausted, I just wanted one day without worry. But I knew if I stopped, Lily would pay the price. That night, curled up in a corner of the sofa, watching my daughter sleep clutching her worn-out teddy bear, I realized I had fallen to the bottom of a nameless pit. But the peaceful look as Lily rested her head on my shoulder lifted me up again. I don't know where the way out is, but I know I won't collapse here. Not while her small hand holds mine in the dark, whispering, "Mom, don't leave me alone." We moved to a shelter for abused mothers and their children on a drizzly morning. I held Lily's hand tightly, the other hand dragging an old, worn suitcase I'd been carrying everywhere for weeks. The sign outside was blurred in the rain, but I could still read the words, "Safe Horizons Shelter. Welcome." The receptionist, a round-faced woman with a gentle voice, led us up to the 3rd floor to a small room with 2 twin beds, an old wooden bookshelf, and a small window overlooking the parking lot. Lily immediately climbed onto the bed near the door, opened her backpack, and hugged a faded stuffed bunny. I stood there watching her, my hands still shaking. My whole body was tense, like a frayed rope about to snap. The woman mentioned dinner time and an evening skills class, but I just nodded along. I was exhausted, not just from the days spent running, but from holding up a strong front for my daughter, while inside, I was falling apart. That first night, I couldn't sleep. The ceiling was stark white, and street lights cast cold, faint streaks through the window. Every small noise in the hallway, the closing of doors, the shuffle of slippers, made my heart jump. I drifted between exhaustion and fear. In my broken dreams, I saw my father's slap, the blood on the kitchen floor, Lily crying, saying, "Mom, where are we going now?" The next morning, I washed my face for a long time under cold water before taking Lily to preschool within the shelter grounds. Then I caught a bus to work. My job at the medical technology company was the only hope I clung to. I hadn't told anyone where I was living. I feared pitying looks and awkward silence if they knew I had no real home. But someone noticed. Tasha, my coworker sitting at the next desk, was a brown-skinned woman with a warm voice and sensitive eyes. One morning, while I was writing a report, she came over and placed a hot cup of tea on my desk. "For you. You look tired." I thanked her, forcing a smile. She said nothing else, just returned to her desk. But 2 days later, during lunch, as I washed my hands in the bathroom, Tasha entered and stopped, her eyes resting on the faint scar on my forehead. I hadn't realized I hadn't covered it with concealer. "Did you fall?" she asked softly, without curiosity, like she'd seen this before. I hesitated a few seconds, then nodded. No denial, no explanation. But Tasha's eyes made me stagger. No pity, no shock, just silent understanding. "I used to have one on my shoulder," she whispered. "I lived in a shelter for almost 3 months. A very kind manager helped me rent a place without paying the full deposit up front." I looked at her. "If you want, I can connect you." Her name's Laura, managing a row of apartments near Durham. Not fancy, but safe and clean, and she gets it. I nearly couldn't breathe from emotion. I couldn't say anything, just squeezed her hand lightly. Tasha didn't ask for more or demand an explanation. She just messaged me. "Send me your paperwork. I'll talk to her for you." 3 days later, I got a text. "Laura agreed. She'll let you pay the deposit in installments over 3 months. You can move in this weekend." I almost couldn't believe my eyes. That night, I told Lily simply, "We're going to have our own home soon." Her eyes widened. "A room just for me, Mom?" I hugged her. "Not a big room, but ours." The moving day came, and I didn't have much. Just one suitcase of clothes, a few personal items stuffed in a fabric bag, my work laptop, and Lily's sparkling eyes taking in the new world. The apartment complex wasn't glamorous. Paint peeling in spots, slightly worn hallways, but the room inside was clean, had a window letting in early sunlight, simple hardwood floors, and a neat little sink. Laura, the gray-hailed woman with glasses, in a calm, firm voice, welcomed us as if we were her most important tenants ever. "I don't care where you're from," she said. "Just pay on time and keep the place clean. The rest will work out together." When I set my bag down, Lily climbed onto the small mattress, turned and smiled brightly. "Is this our house, Mom?" I nodded, my throat tight. I sat down beside her, held her hand, feeling warmth slowly spread from her little palm to my heart. For the first time in months, I took a deep breath and truly felt free. Not because the room was special, but because for the first time after everything, I had a place to start over. No longer hiding from cold stares, no longer silent before cruel words, no longer bracing myself just to survive. Just me and my daughter. And a door that closed behind us and opened ahead. Lily and I began our first days in the empty apartment with only a thin mattress laid on the cold wooden floor. No dining table, no chairs, no wardrobe. Everything was quiet, yet strangely peaceful. I still remember Lily's eyes shining as she looked around the 4 white walls, then turned to me shouting, "Mom, this is our adventure house, right?" I nodded, smiling despite the tightness in my throat. "Yes, adventure house. And you're the captain." Those first nights, we lay side by side on the mattress, sharing a thin blanket. I often waited for Lily to fall asleep before opening my laptop to work or reread contracts, preparing for my first project at the company. The nights were long, but there was no fear behind the door anymore. On Tuesday, Tasha came to find me after work. She said little, just handed me a large cloth bag and said, "This is from all of us. The office is collecting. Everyone's supporting." I opened the bag to find a new bedding set, a small toaster oven, a few picture frames, and a hardcover children's storybook. I nearly cried. That weekend, she and 3 coworkers visited, bringing a foldable wooden dining table, 2 chairs, a bookshelf, and several gently used toys. Lily ran around the house, showing off her new astronaut stuffed animal, while I stood in the small kitchen corner, holding a glass of water, speechless. I can't remember the last time someone gave me something with no expectation in return. Gradually, the little room stopped feeling empty. It smelled like morning toast, echoed with Lily's laughter, listening to children's podcasts, and the sound of my keyboard at night after she was asleep. I started breathing more evenly, sleeping more deeply. The scars remained, both outside and inside, but I began looking in the mirror without turning away. Tasha also introduced me to Dr. Jenkins, a well-known child psychologist in the area, formerly a university professor who switched to private practice for special cases. When we first met, Lily clung to my hand, looking down. But after a few sessions, she began telling stories through dolls, drawings, and her small but determined voice. One evening, Lily sat drawing beside me. She showed me a picture. It had a small house, red roof, blue door, with two figures standing in the yard, one big, one small. I asked, "Who are they, sweetie?" Lily said without looking up, "It's Mom and Lily in our house. This house is small, but no one yells at me here." I couldn't hold back my tears. 1 month later, Lily's class held a parent-teacher meeting combined with a children's art exhibition. I arrived early, wearing a white blouse and jeans, my hair tied back. As I stepped into the hall, I froze. At the far end of the room, I saw my mother, Sandra, standing next to my father. They noticed me almost at the same time. My father avoided eye contact. My mother walked straight toward me, her eyes full of reproach. "I thought you wouldn't bother coming," she said, her voice low and sharp, "because to you it seems like everything is more important than family." I didn't react immediately. I stared at her for a long moment, then replied calmly, "You call that family? Where your daughter gets slapped until she bleeds and your granddaughter is called a trashy kid?" Sandra flushed. "Don't exaggerate, Aaliyah." I tightened my grip on my purse. "I've stayed silent long enough. You read Lily's diary, tore up her drawings, called her clumsy just because she spilled water. Dad slapped me when I stood up for my child. If that's family, then yes, I chose to leave it, and I don't regret it." My words fell into the silence like a stone dropping into a lake. No response came. Only the glances of other parents began shifting toward us, not scrutinizing, not judging, just witnessing the truth unveiled. I walked over to the display tables, where Lily stood next to her teacher. She saw me, eyes brightening, and ran to grab my hand. "I painted this for you, Mom," Lily said, pointing to her new painting. It showed a simple dining table with 2 plates and a small potted plant in the center. I bent down and kissed her forehead. "Our adventure house." Lily nodded. I squeezed her hand gently. Across the room, my parents still stood there, silent and stiff. But I no longer felt fear. I had learned not to bow my head. I had made the right choice leaving. And I would keep living. Because now I lived for no one but my daughter and myself. 6 months after that meeting, I sat in my new apartment, with the afternoon breeze flowing through the high-rising window. Everything in the room was inexpensive, but each piece was the result of my own effort. I had just been promoted at work, officially becoming the content team lead for a public health project. The raise wasn't huge, but enough to prepare me to sign a lease for a 2-bedroom apartment closer to Lily's school, with natural morning light and birdsong drifting in each evening. Lily would have her own room, a space truly hers. I reviewed next month's plan while Lily stuck pictures on the wall with colorful tape Tasha had given her. She hummed softly, a broken melody I had no idea where she learned. Her long curly hair was tied to one side, her tiny hands pressing each corner of the paper to make sure it stuck. Written in red marker across the paper were the words, "Happy family, no yelling." I laughed softly, so quietly I barely noticed the sound. I never thought I could laugh like that in such a quiet space. Since moving here, Lily had changed clearly. She was cheerful, quick, talked more, ate better, and slept better. Every night I read stories to her, and she always chose tales about forests and characters who found home after being lost. One night, Lily whispered, "Mom, in the new house, no one yells at me anymore. And you don't cry anymore either. See?" I swallowed hard. "Yes, I see. Our home is peaceful now, right?" "Peaceful like a seashell, Mom. You can hear your heartbeat." We stroked her hair. That's because our home is a seashell, and we're the waves. I started joining a local single mothers support group, where moms took turns cooking together, sharing used items, going grocery shopping, or simply sitting in a small cafe on Saturday afternoons, sharing their life stories. I never thought I'd find peace in those meetings, but when I heard one mother tell about fleeing a trailer park with her child in the middle of winter, I felt I wasn't alone anymore. I began helping others rewrite resumes, edit cover letters, teach basic content writing skills. One woman named Brooke once held my hand through tears, saying, "You're the first person who made me feel I'm not worthless." One Friday evening, while packing boxes to prepare for moving next week, Lily came out from the next room holding an old drawing. She looked at me with clear, black eyes under the kitchen light. "Mom, do you still love Grandma and Grandpa?" I paused. I sat down beside Lily, wrapping my arms around her. Ugh, that's a hard question. I just wonder, why does Grandma hate me? I gently rubbed her back. She doesn't know how to love right, sweetie. Some adults carry pain so long that they forget how to be gentle. But you're not at fault. Never. Lily looked up. "So, do you still love them?" I squeezed her hand. "I think real family love is when it doesn't hurt you." I loved them very much. But now I love the people who make me feel like myself. Like you. Like Tasha. Like my friends. Family isn't about blood. Family is who's there when you need them. Lily was silent for a long moment, then nodded as if she had just written down something important. She placed the drawing on the table, then ran to the corner of the room to stick it onto a cardboard box. I watched her, feeling warmth in the gentlest and quietest way. I used to think family is where you start, where you return. But now I understand. For many people, family is just the starting point. The destination is where you don't have to bow your head, where you don't have to endure just to exist, where you don't hear the door slam hard behind you. Family isn't where you're born, it's where you're safe. And I found that place, right in the small hand-sticking butterfly stickers onto the box in the corner, in the soft laughter ringing from the open window, in the steady heartbeat of peace after so many years of silent screams. What about you? What do you think truly makes a family? Is it blood, a name, or the safety, the unconditional love we feel every day? If my story reminds you of a memory, a feeling of being abandoned, rising up, or finding peace again, please share in the comments. I want to hear your story because maybe somewhere another mother, another child needs to know they are not alone. And if this story touches something in your heart, please subscribe to follow me and Lily through warm, sunny days, new challenges, and the gentle slices of ordinary yet meaningful life. Because sometimes the truest stories are exactly what we need to find ourselves again.